Hello friends, welcome back to our channel EduVec. So let us finish the final part of the chapter acid bases and salts today. Before starting, brief agenda into what topics we'll be covering. First is common cations, anions and how to write the chemical formula of a salt. Then we would go to chloralkali membrane process for production of NaOH, where the raw material used is NaCl. Then also some of the products like baking soda and baking powder, how they are made and what are the uses. Then finally coming to the crystals of salt. For example, washing soda, Na2O3, Na2CO3.10H2O, gypsum which is CaSO4.2H2O and copper sulfate .5H2O which is blue vitriol. Now coming to salts and formula, there are two groups of compounds I would say. The charged compounds are classified into two categories. The positively charged are called cations and the negatively charged are called anions. So let us try to see how do we write the formula and what are the normal cations and anions. So if you can see the list here, first I am listing all the common cations which are generally used. So you can see mercury 1, Hg2 2 plus, or in other words this is nothing but Hg plus, mercury 2 which is Hg2 plus with the oxidation state of plus 2. Here mercury is in oxidation state of plus 1. Generally the lower oxidation state is called us, or it will be suffixed by us, and the higher oxidation state will be suffixed by ic. So mercurous, mercuric. So nitronium ion is nothing but NO2 plus. Similarly potassium, silver, sodium you are aware. Strontium is Sr plus 2. Tin is Sn plus 2, and again it also exists as plus 4. So here also if you see the lower oxidation state plus 2 is called us, stannous, and the higher oxidation state will be represented by ic, which is stannic. And then zinc also you are aware it's Zn plus 2. Moving to more cations, you can see aluminium is in oxidation state plus 3, ammonium is again plus 1, barium, calcium all plus 2. Then chromium can exist in two states again, so chromous would be plus 2 and chromic would be plus 3. Similarly cuprous, cupric plus 2 is for cupric and plus 1 is for cuprous. Moving to ferric, ferrous, again the higher state is ferric which is plus 3 and smaller or the lower state is plus 2. Hydrogen you know is plus 1, hydronium is also plus 1, also known as oxonium. Lead is plus 2, lithium is plus 1, magnesium is plus 1, again manganese can exist in plus 2 or plus 3. Now coming to some of the commonly used anions which are the negatively charged ions. So when you combine these cations and anions you can write a formula of salt, and this is what I have represented here, how to write the formula. Suppose this is the cation that you have. For example, this is Na plus 1 and this is for example Cl minus. So what will happen, these valencies or the oxidation states what you are seeing on top, these get crossed. So X plus will appear here and Y will appear here. So basically it's a cross, you can say the valencies get crossed whenever you write a formula. So A in oxidation state of X plus and B which is the negatively charged anion in oxidation state of Y minus, the final formula would be AYBX because Y is coming here with A and X is going to B. So AYBX, this is how we write the formula. We will also see some examples. Let us try to look at some anions first. So hydride again minus 1, oxide is minus 2, fluoride is again minus 1, sulfide is minus 2, chloride minus 1, in fact all halogens will be minus 1, nitride is 3 minus, bromide is again minus 1 and iodide is again minus 1. Cyanide minus 1, amide NH2 minus, cyanate would be OCN minus 1, peroxide would be O2 2 minus. So if you are writing hydrogen peroxide which is H plus, hydrogen is plus 1 and peroxide is 2 minus. So hydrogen peroxide will be H2O2 because this 2 will come with hydrogen. Similarly thiocyanate is SCN minus 1, oxalate is nothing but C2O4 2 minus. You also remember this oxalic acid is found in tomatoes, we read in the last lecture. Hydroxide is OH minus, so oxidation state is minus 1, manganate is MnO4 minus. Again, some more negatively charged anions. So this list is not exhaustive, but these I have compiled some most commonly used anions. And I would say if you know the oxidation states in these anions, you will be able to write pretty much any formula. These are the most commonly used salts or the anions which will be a part of salt. So you can see iodate -1, chlorate, bromate, chlorite, hypochlorite, even hypobromite, everything is -1. Carbonate is very common, it's -2. Chromate -2. Bicarbonate is also -1. Then dichromate is 2 minus. Acetate, you know, it's -1. Formate is also -1. Similarly, now coming to some -3 compounds, which are arsenite, phosphate, and arsenate. These would be -3 oxidation state. Then hydrogen phosphate or dihydrogen phosphate, accordingly, -2 for hydrogen phosphate and -1 for dihydrogen phosphate. Sulfate is SO4 2 minus, nitrate -1, hydrogen sulfate is HSO4 minus, nitrite NO2 minus, thiosulfate S2O3 2 minus, sulfite is SO3 2 minus, and perchlorate is ClO4 minus. Now let us come to writing some examples, or maybe you have seen all the oxidation states right now for cations and also for most common anions. I would request you to try and write the formula of these salts. Try it first by yourself, and then afterwards I'll definitely tell you the answer. Okay, so writing the formula of aluminium bromate, you know aluminium will be +3 and bromate you can know from here it's -1. So when you write the formula, the 3 from aluminium should go to bromate and 1 from bromate should come to aluminium. So I hope you would have written the formula by now. Let us go to the second compound, which is magnesium permanganate. Magnesium, you know, it's very common, it's +2, and manganate we saw in the last slide, it is MnO4 -1. So +2 or 2 from magnesium will go to the functional group of manganate and 1 from permanganate will come to magnesium. So try to write this formula also. Shortly we will see all the answers. Coming to ammonium thiosulfate, ammonium you know is NH4 positive or NH4 +1. So oxidation state here is +1 and here it is thiosulfate, you can see from here it is 2 minus. So this 2 should go to ammonium group and 1 from ammonium group should go to thiosulfate. Finally, calcium acetate. You know calcium is +2 and acetate is nothing but -1. So 2 from calcium should go to acetate group and 1 from acetate should come to calcium. Now, please try to check whether the formulas that you have gotten is right. And in case you have doubts or if you are not clear again with writing the formulas, you can drop me a comment. I'll try to cover that in the next lecture. So you can see, so aluminium bromate. So I told you aluminium is +3. This 3 from aluminium will go to the bromate group. And this is what exactly is happening here. And 1 from bromate has come to aluminium, keeping it intact. So aluminium bromate is AlBrO3 whole thrice. Coming to magnesium permanganate. Magnesium was +2, permanganate was -1. So 1 from permanganate goes to magnesium. It does nothing to magnesium. Magnesium remains as Mg. And 2 from magnesium goes to permanganate. So MnO4 whole twice. Similarly, ammonium thiosulfate, you know thiosulfate is 2 minus, you saw it from here, and ammonium was +1. So 2 from thiosulfate went to ammonium group. So NH4 whole twice S2O3. Finally, calcium acetate, you know acetate is -1 and calcium is +2. So 2 from calcium will go to acetate group and calcium will remain as it is without any change. So you can also write this as CaCH3COO whole twice. That is just a representation. You can write it like this, or you can also write it the conventional way we are writing, where the cation is first and anion is afterwards. So you can also write it as CaCH3COO whole twice. So that is also perfectly right. Now moving on further, coming to chloralkali process to make NaOH. You know the raw material to make that process is raw material used in the process is sodium chloride. So you put brine from here. Brine is nothing but concentrated solution of sodium chloride in water. So you put brine here. These are electrodes, positive electrode being the anode and negative electrode being the cathode. These are separated by a membrane. Now the property of this membrane is that it only allows movement of certain ions. It doesn't allow movement of all the ions. So you see only sodium and hydrogen or positive cations will be able to pass through this membrane into the cathodic chamber, but it will not allow the movement of chloride or hydroxide anions into this chamber. So this is the property of this membrane what is using, and that is why it's also called a membrane process. If you remember from our first lecture on chemical reactions and equations, I also told you that, okay, what is the definition of anode and cathode? So if you remember that right, cathode is where always reduction takes place and anode is where always oxidation takes place. So moving into the reaction which happens at each of the electrode. So HER is nothing but hydrogen emitting reaction. Because hydrogen is releasing here, we call it as HER reaction or HER reaction on cathode. So water is taking 2 electrons and it is breaking down into hydroxide ion and releasing hydrogen. So you can see here, this is gain of electrons, and gain of electrons is called what? It is called reduction, and reduction happens always at cathode. So you can link it with the first chapter that we completed. Coming to the second electrode, which is the anode, and you know there will be oxidation happening at anode, and oxidation is nothing but loss of electrons. So you see the chloride ion which are present here because you are using brine, which is NaCl, and NaCl, when you put it in water, it will exist as Na plus and Cl minus ions. So Cl minus is losing 2 electrons and it is releasing chlorine gas. Now this chlorine gas will come out from this anodic chamber, and this chlorine, you know, it has several uses. It is used in water treatment. You can also smell this chlorine gas in swimming pools because of addition of bleaching powder. They also use it to make CPVC lines or chlorinated PVC lines, which are more durable than normal PVC lines. Disinfectants, chlorofluorocarbons, and finally pesticides. So these are some uses of chlorine. Similarly, the hydrogen which is released here, that can be used for saturation or making unsaturated fats as saturated, and then in fertilizers, also in fuel, in thermal cracking. So all these processes hydrogen will be used, and this sodium hydroxide will come out of cathodic chamber. And the uses of sodium hydroxides are several, used for degreasing of metals, soaps and detergents, paper making, and also artificial fibers. So the overall reaction, if I tell, the overall reaction would be 2NaCl plus 2H2O, which is nothing but the solution of brine. It will release chlorine gas, it will release hydrogen gas, and finally NaOH will be formed in this cathodic chamber. You can collect NaOH from here. And I've also explained how hydrogen and chlorine are released respectively at cathode and anode. So like I said, this special membrane, it's called ion exchange membrane. It allows sodium to pass to the right chamber, forming NaOH, but it will not allow chloride or hydroxide anion to pass into the right chamber. Yes, so this is also what I iterated before. NaOH is formed in the cathodic chamber. So it's in cathodic chamber where NaOH is formed, and also in cathodic chamber is where hydrogen is released. In anodic chamber, chlorine is released, and brine is also fed into the anodic chamber. This entire process is called chloralkali process. Why chloralkali? Because chlorine is getting released and alkali is getting formed. So alkali is nothing but your sodium hydroxide. So this is called chloralkali process. There are several ways of building this cell or carrying out this process. One is diaphragm cells, where the chambers would be separated from each other. There will not be a membrane. Instead, there will be a diaphragm. You can also use a mercury cell, or you can use a membrane cell. So right now, the illustration that is given here is membrane cell. We will cover these diaphragm cells and mercury cells also, but in later classes. But right now, this process is chloralkali membrane process. Now moving on further, like I said, chlorine which was getting evolved, you can use that chlorine, get it reacted with calcium hydroxide to form bleaching powder. So now this bleaching powder has several uses. It is used as oxidizing agent or dyeing agent in paper and pulp industry, textile industry, also in laundry as a disinfectant, and this chlorine is also used as oxidizing agent. Then baking soda is nothing but Na2CO3. So NaCl, which was used in making NaOH, is also a raw material which is used for making baking soda. So NaCl, when it reacts with carbon dioxide and ammonia, it forms ammonium chloride and sodium bicarbonate. Now bicarbonate, when you further heat it, it decomposes to form sodium carbonate and releases of CO2. So that is the process how we manufacture sodium carbonate. This is used in antacids and soda acid fire extinguisher. So we have already seen what these are. Coming to baking powder, so baking powder is nothing but baking soda, and which is NaHCO3. And when you add mild edible acid like tartaric acid, just to give it some acidity, so that it's easier for baking soda to release carbon dioxide, it becomes, this combination or this mixture becomes baking powder. So you can see NaHCO3 plus H plus, or you can also have Na2CO3 plus H plus. So NaHCO3 plus hydrogen ion. This hydrogen ion is coming from tartaric acid to make it slight acidic. When you heat this, it releases carbon dioxide gas, releases water, and of course it forms sodium salt of whatever acid we have used. So in case this H plus is coming from tartaric acid, it will form sodium tartrate. Now this release of CO2 gas, it will make the dough of the bread to rise, or in other words, it will make cakes and breads fluffy because gas is getting released from the mixture. Now, can you write the reaction with tartaric acid? I have given you the formula of tartaric acid, C4H6O6. It's very easy. What you have to do is sodium bicarbonate plus tartaric acid. It should give you CO2 plus H2O and sodium salt of tartaric acid, which is sodium tartrate. It's nothing. Now you know how to write the formulas. So Na is plus 1, and when you remove one hydrogen from here, it will be I would say C4H5O6 minus. So it will also have one negative valency. So the formula would be C4H5O6Na. That is nothing but sodium tartrate. But I want you to write this reaction yourself because you have already seen how to write the reactions. And I have also told you the oxidation states. So tartrate would be -1 and sodium is +1. So it's straightforward. There will not be any additional valency. You just have to remove one hydrogen and just write sodium in place of that. Now moving to crystals of salt. The first salt that you are seeing here, that is nothing but Na2CO3. This is carbonate. These are two sodium ions. These are surrounded by 10 water molecules. So these are called crystals of salts, or these the molecules are called water of crystallization. So as long as water of crystallization is forming this type of structure, the integrity of salt is maintained. The moment you heat it, it will disintegrate. So this is called washing soda, Na2CO3.10H2. Now the uses of washing soda, I think you are aware. It's used in making borax, which is used in glass industry. It's also used to remove permanent hardness of water, which is a reaction of great significance. So water has permanent hardness because of calcium and magnesium salts. So you can see calcium +2 in water, when it reacts with carbonate, which is coming from say sodium carbonate, it will form calcium carbonate and it will precipitate as white solid. Now you can separate the solid out, thus removing the hardness of the water. Same thing goes with magnesium carbonate. So if you have magnesium salts and you reacted with sodium carbonate, what will happen is it will form magnesium carbonate and the hardness can be removed. Other uses would be cleaning glass, soap and paper industry for washing soda. Coming to the next crystal of salt, this is gypsum. So gypsum is something which is added in cement to delay the setting of cement. So if you heat gypsum to 373 Kelvin, it forms a very special salt, which is calcium sulfate dot half H2O, and it loses 1.5 molecule of water. So if you heat it to 200 degrees, it will become anhydrous. Anhydrous means there will be only calcium sulfate. There will not be any water of crystallization linked to it. This is a very special reaction. So you can see above 200 degrees Celsius or above, I would say 473 Kelvin, this will lose all the water molecules and only calcium sulfate will be formed. Now mixing with water forms gypsum. So the moment you get this anhydrous salt, or even in this salt called plaster of Paris, you add water, it will again form back calcium sulfate dot 2H2O, which is gypsum. Now this type of cement or this type of compound, this is exclusively or extensively mined in Paris, and that is how it gets its name, plaster of Paris, because it is abundantly mined in Montmartre district in Paris. Now coming to the last crystal of salt, which is blue vitriol. Blue vitriol, as the name suggests, it's blue in color, and this is nothing but copper sulfate dot 5H2. So you can see the structure here. Copper is linked to 5 water molecules, and one water molecule is linked to sulfate. So just think about it a little bit. what will happen if you heat this salt, or what typically happens when you heat any of these salts. Slowly they will start losing water molecules and they will start losing weight. And if you heat this blue vitriol, ultimately it will lose its color. So blue will become to maybe colorless or maybe very faint grayish color, but it will definitely not be blue. Just to show how it loses water molecule, what I have done is I have put a TGA graph. This is nothing but a thermogravimetric analysis graph. So you keep on heating the salt and then you analyze the weight loss. So if water is getting lost at certain temperature, definitely the total salt will lose weight, right? So you see, the moment it reaches, I would say, around 60-70 degrees, it first loses 2 water molecules, and the reduction in weight is 14.42% because of loss of 36 grams, because water molecule is 18 grams, and when you lose 2 water molecules, you will almost lose 14.428%. Now, second or second 2 sets of water molecule will get lost at another temperature, maybe somewhere around 120 degrees. So first will happen at around 70 degrees, it loses 14.4% weight, and then 2 more water molecules are lost, it loses the weight, and the final water molecule, which is strongly bonded, maybe as a hydrogen through hydrogen bonds. We will get more into details of regarding this hydrogen bond when we start this bonding chapter, different types of bonds, ionic bonds, coordination bonds, and hydrogen bonds. But the message here is these water molecules are bonded to copper and also to the sulfate with different forces, and based on how weak is the bond, the evolution of or the removal of water will happen. So first, the most loosely bonded water molecules will get evaporated only at 70 degrees itself, because they are not very strongly bonded. Second would be the second set of water molecules, 2 water molecules, which are little bit strongly bonded than the first 2, and then you need a temperature of maybe 120 for evaporation or losing of those water. And then the final water molecule, which is the strongest of all, that will be lost at, say, more than or around 220 or more than 220 degrees Celsius. So this is how the TGA curve progresses. So you start from here and you start losing water molecules, and at the end, anhydrous copper sulfate, if you heat it directly to 220 degrees, what you will have is anhydrous copper sulfate, means only CuSO4 without any water of crystallization. So that's all for this chapter. I hope you enjoyed it. In case you have learned something new, or in case you found it interesting, please give us a thumbs up, and also try to share this with your friends so that they are also able to take full benefit of these classes. So in the next lecture, we will talk about metals and non-metals. So that's all from my side. Thank you all.